This is Johnny with TigerBomb MMA, and today I'm going over UFC Vegas 99, Hernandez versus Pereira, giving you my thoughts and predictions on how many fucking fights is it on this card? 11 bout card. Great main event. Absolutely very difficult main event to predict money-wise. Putting money down on that one, I think the easiest thing to do is just eating the chalk. Eat the chalk. Eat the chalk and just doesn't go the distance on that one. But overall, pretty fun card. I might be missing this card. I got to do some bullshit family stuff. But never stopped me before from like going to weddings and watching fights as, they're committing themselves to each other. But ultimately, I'll give you my quick thoughts on this. I wanted to give you my breakdown on the previous card, the Royval versus Taira card. Overall, I went 7 out of 12. A couple mistakes here and there. I actually thought wrestling would be effective in this card, but it really wasn't. Well, to an extent it was, but first fight of the night, I'm going to break this down real quick, give you my thoughts. I forgot to mention the fight Clayton Carpenter versus Lucas Rocha. I was actually kind of thinking, Rocha might be a good play just because, maybe Carpenter hasn't really been fighting for a while. He's been inactive. Ultimately, I would have gone Carpenter, but I felt as if he would win by a decision. He manhandled this kid. Unfortunately, he looked way too small. Once I saw him in the face-offs, I knew Carpenter was going to win. There was a good moment there where Rocha was landing clean strikes. He kind of made Carpenter a little uncomfortable, but ultimately when he got the takedowns, that was kind of a wrap. He took his back, choked him out. Kind of the same expectations that we had from Carpenter. It was kind of like a, let's not bet him yet. He was like minus 2 something. For a guy who I haven't seen fight in like a year, it was like, we'll see. Next bout, I picked Dan Argueta to beat Cody Haddon, and I'll be up front, man. Cody Haddon really impressed me in this fight. I thought there was going to be moments there where Argueta would get him to the ground and control him, but there were moments there where Dan had him dead to rights with, like, right in that perfect moment where he had the hips, and Cody Haddon just completely sprawled out of it, even though he was exhausted, which some people were saying he didn't look great, but he was dead tired, and he was still stuffing the takedowns of Dan Argueta, who is like an EPO monster. So props to him. Yeah, Dan Argueta, it's going to be rough to see what they do with him, but he is a very experienced fighter, and that's a really good look for Cody Haddon. I knew his striking was good, which it did look good here, but his takedown defense ability really kind of outshined his striking for me anyways. Corey McKenna, I picked her to win. What she did in the third round is what I predicted she would do for at least 2 rounds. Pilastri, again, very good at stuffing these takedowns, really punished McKenna with the clinch. And funny enough, McKenna was just like, I got nothing else. Like, her boxing looked okay at moments. Like, she wasn't completely outgunned on the feet. Pilastri did land the harder shots, but McKenna just kind of went back to what she knows, which is, I got to clinch up with her to try to take her down. Anytime she did that, she got a knee to the body. I don't know if she can have kids anymore, but ultimately, McKenna lost that fight. She got cut. Good for Pilastri. Junior Tafa defeats Sean Sharif. I was live betting most of this card. I actually bet the fight would end in the first round. It bit me in the ass. I was pissed. I'm like, either one of you guys go for it. They were both exhausted. Junior Tafa, if I'm going to be polite here, he looked like a pile of dog shit walking. He could barely finish Sean. His takedown defense looked somewhat better. I mean, the fact that he did stuff a takedown at least once indicates that it is improving to an extent. I mean, I am more impressed by Sharif, a guy who took the fight on like super short notice. He gassed out, and then he got blasted into oblivion. But he had a moment there where we nearly finished him in the first round. Mark Smith should have stopped the damn fight, but it is what it is. Ultimately, I did have another parlay with the under, which cashed. Junior has to drop to a 205 ASAP because this Lardo is not meant for. He's not meant for heavyweight. Next bout, Themba Gorimbo defeating Nico Price. I ate the chalk there. Took Gorimbo. Gorimbo dominated Nico Price. I kept hearing people saying that, like, that he's not the guy that you think he is. And I'm like, who do you think Themba is? Like, do you think he's going to be this top prospect? I'm like, he's a guy that he works hard, period. He's not necessarily talented, but he works hard, and that hard work and determination is what I'm betting on sometimes. Like, if, say, for example, you're like, who are you going to bet on? The guy that if he doesn't win a fight might starve to death, or the guy who's been knocked out a couple times and he's kind of come to the end of his career. I'll go with the guy who might not eat if he doesn't win this fight, literally. So yeah, he made that look pretty easy. Not perfect, and I think he's going to be stepping in and fighting Fakhretdinov, which is going to be interesting once I see those odds. Pat Sabatini defeats Jonathan Pierce. Pierce did the one thing that Sabatini needed him to do, which was play at his range, which is zero range. I mean, he clinched up with him, and when you do that, it's kind of a wrap. Sabatini will wrap you up, and he handled him accordingly. I kept saying, like, well, because Sabatini's going to be fighting a white guy, his brain won't be preoccupied with racial slurs for black dudes and Brazilians, so he must be, thinking clearly to try to focus on winning a fight. Turns out, Sabatini is one of the list of people that Jonathan Pierce doesn't like. So he probably had like Guinea Wap, Dago in his brain this whole time. So he's like, I'm going to go get this Guinea Wap. And yeah, he got submitted by him. Razaman Temizov, oh boy, he knocked the fuck out of CJ. I had him on a chalk parlay. Ultimately, just to let you know, I did bet Taira and I ended up breaking even on this card. But CJ running around the cage like that, I mean, you do it once, I get it, but you do it twice, it's kind of a habit. So it's really funny that he's kind of gotten into that habit, but ultimately those punches from that little monster put him away. D-Rod defeats Alex Morono. Didn't look great. They both look bad. Morono slowed down. D-Rod put a little bit more pressure on him. It was a weird split decision. Grant Dawson destroys Rafa Garcia. It was good to see him getting a finish, right? And then he talked about his I was like, I don't know about Grant, like I'm not sure if I like Grant. Then he talks about his wife's like badonk. I was like, okay, he's cool, he's one of us, he's a cool dude. GD, I don't even want to say that he beat Jared Gooden. Jared Gooden beat Jared Gooden, and it's not to say that, oh my god, Jared is too talented to lose, he can only beat himself. No, I mean, Jared seemingly wanted to lose this fight. He barely did anything. He put himself in positions for Chidi to do the bare minimum. And, Chidi was lighting him up, and then he would, get the range would get closed on him. And then, I forgot to change the image here. There you go. Now we're talking about Taira and Royval. Got in close. He got clinched up, knee to the body a billion times. Jared's going to get cut again. They're going to bring him in again for a short notice bout. I don't know why they keep doing it, but he sucks. Jun Park, I picked Tavares. Tavares looked good early, and then I gotta admit it now, he just falls off a cliff. He has a really good round number 1, then he just forgets how to fight. And Jung Young Park, he did bare minimum in round number 3. And some people might say, yeah, like you might be able to give Brad round number 2. He landed the harder shots. He did, but optically, it was pretty bad. And then finally, Royval versus Taira. I'm gonna give you a quick breakdown of how I would have scored it, because there's gonna be a lot of people bitching about my scorecard. But for me, I would have scored it a draw. And the reason for it, there's 2 options in that fight where you could have given a 10-8. For me, it was round number 2 for Taira, and then round number 3 for Royval. If you negate all that and you talk about who won the fight, Royval won the fight hands down, right? Like, he landed the harder shots. He nearly got the finish. Taira kind of controlled a lot, but it was mostly Brandon landing the more effective fight-ending shots. If you're talking about who won the organized contest between 2 professional fighters where points are involved, then I thought that was a draw. I think round number 2 could have been scored a draw. Could have, based off of the criteria, which I've literally been quizzed on twice already, which would be that if you have dominance, duration, and damage, 2 of those are needed for a 10-8. And in round number 2, he had the dominance and the duration. So he essentially dominated Royval on the mat for the entirety of the entire round, more or less. Give a minute or so, I should say. And if you were to judge that based off of just one round, or maybe even just a jiu-jitsu competition, you would say Taira dominated Royval on the ground. The problem with that is you kind of see the rest of the fight and you come up with a conclusion, but live I would have given that a 10-8 for Taira. Bare minimum giving him the 10-8. That is the bare minimum criteria. Just 2 of those 3, damage, duration, and dominance. He had duration and dominance, so fuck it. That is the base minimum. Why not? Just give it to him. Round number 3, where Royval nearly finished Taira, was closer to being a 10-8, a definitive 10-8, because he had him wobbled, he had him hurt, nearly put him out. Then ultimately, it goes back to a 10-9 because Taira takes his back, controls him for a bit, and nearly chokes him out. Just time ran out. So super fucking close. Either one, I would understand a 10-8. Neither got a 10-8. Taira lost that one. It was a fun fight back and forth. I think Taira showed grit, and Royval showed that he's still in that top of the division. So props to him. Yeah, I broke even on this card. Then made most of my money on NFL. But let's go back to this card here, breaking it down really quickly because I have a vacation I gotta go to, so I gotta start fucking packing. And I'll also be dropping my next video prediction, the 308 for Taporia versus Holloway, should be coming out soon as well. But yeah, breaking down this fight, let's go to the card here. That's that one. All right, first fight of the night, we've got Robles Despaigne versus Austin Lane. Funny that they rhyme, but odds have it in favor of Despaigne, minus 385. Come back on Austin Lane, plus 295. I got to go Despaigne by knockout, and the main reason is because Austin Lane, he sucks, right? Like, he's been knocked out literally both times in his UFC career, right? Like, on top of that, he gassed out literally holding a man down on top control in Denise. Despaigne, I picked against him his last fight. Some moron left a comment saying, aha, I can't believe you picked the guy correctly. You faded him correctly, but you picked that he would get a submission or a finish, and you didn't predict that. Like, what more do you fucking want from me? I picked a plus 200 plus underdog to beat this guy that everyone's sucking off, and you want me to, like, accurately predict how he's going to win? Just give me the fucking money and suck a dick. But ultimately, in that fight, I did like a lot of what Despaigne had to offer. I know he looked shit on the ground, but he didn't get finished. He just seemingly gave me the impression that, like, that was a really good learning lesson for him, and he's going to be a little bit more patient. And on top of that, Austin Lane's chin is not going to be able to handle this. I can almost predict correctly that Despaigne will stuff takedowns here, and he's probably going to knock out Lane with his, like, head in his crotch. He's going to elbow him to fuck, and Despaigne's going to knock him out. Like, I know people might be thinking this might be a letdown spot. I really don't think so. I think Despaigne learned from his last mistake fight. He knows people are going to try to wrestle him, and he's not going to be able to get everyone out of there as quickly as, what was his name? Not Parker Porter, but Josh Parisian, for God's sakes. In this one, I do think he gets that first round knockout. So I've got Despaigne first round knockout. Next bout, we've got Elise Ardelean versus Melissa Martinez. This is going to be, as Herb Dean, the gold standard, put it, the best, 45 minutes of your life. 3 straight women's bouts. I like Ardelean for many reasons. 2 reasons. Her big fat ass. But she's a funny girl. And I don't know for sure if she has an OnlyFans, but because she has mostly free content on Instagram, to my knowledge, it's not that kind of content, but to an extent it is. She seems like an okay fighter. She is, plus 130 here. She has a chance to win if she mixes things up, but I don't necessarily consider her to be like anything too special. I mean, she can fight. She can go out there. She ends combinations with kicks, but so does Melissa Martinez, who has a Taekwondo background, not black belt. I have no idea what her fucking belt is. It's from Mexico, so it could be, I don't want to get into that. Minus 155 for the Mexican Super Melee. Pretty bad performance her last time out. Kind of showed that she didn't have proper boxing skill, but she has good kicks. She's got good aggression. Very athletic, and I think her takedown defense here is going to really shine. I think she's very athletic to kind of pop back up. Ardelean is going to want to keep it on the ground, on the feet. I think Martinez is just cleaner. She is maybe not the better boxer. I think anyone at this point can be a better boxer than Martinez. If she's getting hit that cleanly by Elise Reed, not a fan. But given the time that she's kind of been away, she had her first loss, a very good learning lesson. She's 27 now. I'm expecting her boxing to get better. I'm actually going to take her to win this one by a decision for Martinez. But yeah, props to Ardelean if she can get this win. Sometimes what I notice with any fighters in general, they get it to the UFC, they get a little bit more money than they're used to, and their training regimen improves, and they, enhance their skills. But for a 32-year-old woman against a very young, athletic, hungry girl, I got to go with the starving Mexican here. Next bout, I've got Jessica Penne versus the aforementioned Elise Reed. Elise Reed minus 155. Penne is plus 130. I got to go with Reed. Few reasons, obviously. I think 10 years younger, better striker. Her takedown defense has improved. She's not really going to have much of a threat of getting knocked down or hurt. I think she's just been slightly improving everywhere, and I've always been impressed by her skill set. I think she's tough. It's just she's on this win lose kind of streak, and she beat Super Melly. It's just when you get her to the ground and you hold her there, she's a gasser, which is terrible. It's tough. It's really tough saying that I think Elise Reed's going to win, but I really do think this is a really good matchup for her. Jessica Penne is way past her expiration date. She's making, nearly sexual content with Angela Hill online. She's past her prime, but she is still a very deadly jiu-jitsu gal, and if she gets it to the ground, I can see her possibly submitting Reed, but Reed is in her, I hate saying the word prime, but she's in her prime right now compared to Penne. And I think she's tough enough to avoid the submissions and just beat up Jessica Penne. And I think you can get her out of there. I'm going to actually go by knockout in the second round here for Elise Reed. Let's move on here. Oh, another one here. Jocelyn Edwards versus Tamaris Vidal. I'm taking Edwards by decision. As much as I think Edwards can get a finish, she's minus 215 compared to the plus 165 of Vidal. Vidal, she, how can I put this? She experienced the titty quitty. She got hit in the tit and she just gave up against Melissa Gatto. I think Vidal is one of the worst fighters on the roster. Her, the girl that beat her in Rendon, that Mexican chick, they don't belong, right? And Jocelyn Edwards has shown moments of kind of brilliance in the cage for who she is and what her level is. Like, her takedown defense has gotten a little bit better. Her ground game has gotten better. Striking's always been there. Her cardio's getting a little bit better. Ultimately, I think the takedowns of Edwards are really going to get her this victory here. On the feet, I think she's going to be a little bit cleaner. She's got a slightly larger reach. She's a slightly larger girl. It's just me completely fading Vidal here. So much so that I might just take her straight. That's how confident I am that Vidal sucks. But then you realize Edwards, despite maybe being the much better fighter, I know she is the better fighter, but I'm saying maybe being the much better fighter is still a woman, and she could fuck this up for everybody. So I'll probably still parlay her just because fuck it. But I've got Edwards by decision. Next bout, we've got Brad Katona versus Jean Matsumoto. Jean Matsumoto is minus 245, 25 years old, versus Brad Katona, Superman, plus 190. I would love, and if I gave enough of a shit about making content, I would love to hit up Brad Katona, like, super annoyingly, like, hey bud, do you want to like make some stuff with me? Because I have this bit where, like, Brad Katona, because he gives me that vibe of being creep, and I bring this up every time, but in my head it's so fucking good. But Brad Katona is keeping me in his basement, tied up for no sexual reason. No, puts on a wig on me because he wants to dance with me because he has a weird like dance fetish. But I think that's exactly who he gives off the impression of being, just this creepy dude that in Canada that just keeps people in his basement so he can dance with them when he gets home from work. John Matsumoto, though, on the other hand, he gives me the impression of being a very, very highly touted stud. He's 15-0, minus 245, as I mentioned earlier. Very hard low kicks. This guy is a complete package. But with the complete package, there's ways to exploit that, right? You can definitely eat away minutes with this guy, which I don't think is going to work with Katona. There's a chance it might. Like, if you're thinking Katona can grind this guy out, eating minutes away from what John Matsumoto's going to do, then you might want to take a shot on him, because with judging these days, it's super difficult to kind of guess what they're going to want. Matsumoto is going to be throwing combinations, ending with hard low kicks. This dude throws nasty low kicks, which I love, man. This guy's got really good get ups. Not necessarily the best takedown defense. Like if we were comparing this to Hadden from last week, he's going to get taken down, but he can pop right back up. It's more his mindset of when he is able to do damage, he will do the damage. That is more appealing to the judges. It's a lot easier to judge a guy throwing strikes than it is to, I don't know, hold the guy down, not throwing strikes, and call that guy the winner. I think Brad Katona is a very good fighter. I think he's very experienced. He's fought a lot better competition. And when you look at John Matsumoto's last fight, where I picked Dan Argueta to beat him, he was essentially beating Matsumoto on kind of that time and control, which again, it sucks to say, but if we're trying to make money here on dogs, that's a possibility. Again, with judges, like there's going to be a lot of people out there that might bet this and it goes the opposite way because Katona does eat enough time on the clock. Because again, it is not necessarily just a fight. It is a fight, but when we are judging this, when it hits the scorecards, if Matsumoto does not finish Katona, they're going to have to judge it based as if it was a contest, which it is, like who scored more points, who had more control. And that's what Katona is really the best at. But ultimately, I do think when they are on the feet, really, when they're not hugging against the cage, I think Matsumoto is going to be landing effective strikes that is going to be more appealing to the judges. I don't think this is a good spot to bet him, though. Minus 245. I would say maybe the fight goes the distance. I don't see Brad Katona finishing this kid in any shape or fashion. John could find that submission or that finish, but Brad's never been finished before. I don't believe he has, actually. That's, I don't know, whatever. But ultimately, I got Brad Katona to not weasel his way into this decision here. Next bout, we've got Mateus Nicolau versus Asu Almabaev. Now, Nicolau, there's a lot of negative you can say about Nicolau, right? Like he doesn't really engage much. He has a funky style where he kind of lulls you to sleep, and he can finish you. He has a rat face. Lots of negative about Nicolau. Shitty chin, terrible chin, one of the worst chins. Got knocked out by Dustin Ortiz back in the day with a blocked head kick, for God's sakes. Go back and look at that. Hand is up, knocks him the fuck out. Like, just swoop. So, Almabaev, I've not been sold on Almabaev ever, really. But for a 22-2 guy, the way he's handling these guys, it's very impressive. It is still impressive to me, but although I'm not necessarily fully sold on the guy, I want to see what his striking's like. At minus 185, I think against Nicolau, I got to go with him just because his confidence is at an all-time high, and Nicolau's must be at an all-time low, right? He's been knocked out twice in a row. He was close to a title. Little rat face was sniffing that title. You know what I'm saying? Like he was close to it. He's number 10 in the world. How is his confidence going to be against a guy who is undefeated in the UFC on a great run, knowing that he can potentially get taken down easily and controlled, eating away at those minutes, and even worse, getting knocked out by this guy? This guy, if he comes out here and disregards him, starts faking takedowns, Nicolau's hands go down, you get caught with an uppercut or an overhand right, it's going to be even more embarrassing with this guy knocking you out. He's 5'4". I have to go with Almabaev. I'm going to take him by a decision. I do think he grinds him out. He's not really much of a finisher unless it's like a submission. And I don't really see him submitting Nicolau unless he actually catches him with something. Like he's even been throwing like spinning wheel kicks against this giant fucking Jose Johnson, which I actually picked. I thought Johnson was really going to do a lot better, and that's what really impressed me. I think Johnson, you look at his record and you say he sucks, right? But he dropped down to 125. That's crazy. He made the weight. But I've been seeing improvements in Jose Johnson over the years that I felt like maybe he can knock this dude out. He might be able to finish him. But here, though, I got to go with Almabaev, mostly a fade on Nicolau. Not necessarily because I'm like, oh my God, Almabaev he's the truth. He's going to be the next champ. I think he gets through Nicolau, and I'm going to be intrigued how he fights and how he looks against like top 10 competition once he gets that ranking. So I've got Almabaev by decision. Next bout, Darren Elkins versus Daniel Pineda. I got to go with Pineda here. Very simply, he's minus 130, which I really thought he would have been the dog here. But minus 130, incredibly dangerous. As long as he paces himself, I think he can hurt Elkins to the point that even if he doesn't finish him, he can still win this decision. Elkins, we know, can take a ton of damage. Um, yeah, he literally has it tattooed on his chest, but he's 40. That's fucking an old guy fight. 39 and 40 years old. Darren the Damage versus Daniel the Pit. How I'm seeing it is Daniel Pineda hits harder. He's just the more durable at this point. It's just that if he gets tired, he's going to be kind of easy pickings for Darren Elkins, who can push a pace. So Darren's going to want to come out here and push a pace really early, getting Daniel tired, but Daniel can definitely out wrestle Darren. He can bully him around, go for submissions, maybe even knock him out, throw hard low kicks. To me, I'm actually going to pick him to win this one by knockout within the first 2 rounds, like under 1.5. I think he can finish Darren any possible way he wants to, but he has to be patient here. I still think Daniel has it because of all the steroids he did back in PFL. He still has some residuals in there, those pictograms, if you will, John Jones. So for me, I'll go with the guy that looks like he is still juicing compared to Darren Elkins, who can take a ton of damage. But at a certain point, at 40 years old, you can't roll back that odometer, my man. You're going to eventually get put the fuck out. Next bout, very fun fight between these two grapplers here. We've got Brady Hiestand versus Jake Hadley. Bam, bam, Hiestand, minus 155. Come back on Jake Hadley. White Kong is plus 125. I've been a pretty big supporter of Hiestand. I think I've picked him in every single one of his fights. Except for actually, I think I've been capping this guy pretty perfectly. Yeah, I Garrett Armfield, man. I'm pretty sure I picked Hiestand. I'm positive, just because I am like a pretty big fan of Garrett Armfield. Like, he made me a ton of money. But with Brady, what makes this one so intriguing? Brady's a giant at 135 here. Jake Hadley obviously moving up from 125. He looked good against Colin Loughran. Stuff takedowns, but Hiestand's a different beast, man. He's a different beast, and I think the only way you can finish this guy, like, you have to put him out cold, and if you give him chance to breathe, if you hurt him, he falls over, and then you go to finish him with strikes, he will throw up his legs, he will recover. This guy's got decent enough recovery to make you pay for whatever mistakes you make. He's got really good grappling. He's just going to be way too physical in my eyes for Jake Hadley. I think he's going to win this one by a decision. Jake's going to be very dangerous on the feet. He's got good boxing. Good boxing in this situation. I mean, if you put him up, like, again, like I faded Jake Hadley against Charles Johnson, who has better like really clean boxing compared to Jake Hadley. Jake Hadley's boxing is trash, but compared here to Hiestand, who his boxing sucks, he's got really good boxing, like levels above Hiestand. Hiestand's got good head kicks. He's very athletic. He's very strong, very good cardio. I think he's going to put on a pace on Jake, and he's going to control him on the ground. I think he's going to be clever enough to not get submitted by Jake, who's got a very good guard, very good rubber game. I've got Hiestand here to win this one by a decision. If he finishes Jake Hadley, that's going to be impressive, but a guy like Nascimento could not finish Jake on the ground. So I think it's going to be a grinding decision for Brady. I think he's going to probably get hurt. He tends to get hurt in almost every one of his fights. He got hurt against Armfield. He got hurt against Dana Baccarat, and Fernie Garcia dropped him pretty bad. But yeah, I've been picking Hiestand as a dog almost every single time, and he's always come through. This might be the curse breaker, but to me, I've got Hiestand to win this one by a decision. Next bout, we've got Sumudaerji versus Charles Johnson. Johnson minus 210. Sumudaerji is plus 170. This is pretty easy. Charles Johnson, I think he's firing on all cylinders at this very point. Like, he's been looking kind of hit or miss at times, but when he's on, I think he's a very good flyweight. So I do think he can actually knock out Sumudaerji in maybe the later rounds. Sue, very dangerous very early. First round, super dangerous. I think he can maybe even knock out Charles Johnson. He's been clipped a few times recently, kind of dropped, nearly finished. But yeah, I do think that the pace, the wrestling, Charles Johnson has to be the smarter fighter here. There's a clear path to beat Sumudaerji, getting him to the ground, beating his ass, kind of extending the fight. You can finish him. I think if and when Charles puts on that pressure and pace on him, he's going to be able to find a finish. I actually will pick him in the third round. For Sue, though, like, we need to remember he is still a very talented fighter. He's only 28 years old. You know, he's a guy not as tall as Johnson. At least that's what we're being told. I think Johnson might be a little bit shorter, but 72-inch reach. If Sue can land one of those laser beam left hands, man, it might be a wrap for Charles, because although Charles is having a ton of success, there's some context to that. Like he's getting his ass beat by fucking everybody, like getting demolished on the ground, getting just out wrestled, and then he beats Maxim in a decision that, you know, definitely went his way, but it could have gone the opposite way. He got dropped bad in the first round there, nearly finished, and I think Maxim maybe blew his wad thinking this guy's a joke, and then he kind of gassed himself out there. Jake Hadley, you know, that was a pretty easy one. Like, I think it was Jake Hadley winning the third round, but for me, that was a pretty easy fate of Jake. I made some money there. And then against Joshua Van, I did actually surprisingly bet Charles, even though I picked Van, just thinking he might pull this out of his ass with like volume late. He ended up knocking him out, and that's a sign of, you know, things to come in the right direction for Charles Johnson, being more aggressive, just pushing that pace. And I think that's what he's going to do here to Sumudaerji. Fuck it, I'm going to say second round. I think he can do it a little bit earlier. Just has to be careful here. Don't be fucking stupid. You can finish the guy. And then what do we have here? Rob Font versus Kyler Phillips. Kyler minus 280, come back on Rob Font plus 210. You know, at this point, it's a full fade on Rob Font. Rob Font he's up there in age. He's 37. He's been getting hurt by almost everybody as of late. He's still durable enough, but I don't like even saying that, the durability. I say durability because he's not getting finished, but in my eyes, every time he like stumbles back and he like takes a knee, might as well just call that a finish. Like, that is not good for the brain. And Kyler's going to be very fast early on the feet. He's going to be really quick. He's going to be throwing kicks. I think he's going to be a little too quick for Rob Font, who himself is very fast, but at 37, you know, not anymore. His boxing's obviously going to be great, but plan B for Kyler, take him to the ground, dominate him there. We've seen Rob Font get dominated by really not real grapplers, like, for example, Corey Sandhagen took him down easily. Oh boy, I hate this because I love Rob Font. I've always loved his style. I wanted him to get farther. I picked him to beat Yanez, and he did it. So I still feel like, you know, like we got something here, bro. But I think Kyler is, at this point, like, he's another guy firing on all cylinders. Like, he's made his mistakes in the past, and he might be looking to get a finish here. But he's probably going to play this one smart. This is for the number 10 ranking. He's going to play it smart. He's going to take him down. He's going to dominate him. He's going to win this one by decision. If he can finish him along the way, it kind of puts a stamp on it. But I've got Kyler Phillips to win this one by a decision. And then finally, the main event, which I'm going to be taking most of my time talking about this one. I've been talking for about 32 minutes already. But Michel Dolimador Pereira versus Fluffy Anthony Hernandez. Minus 160 for Hernandez. Come back on Pereira is plus 130. So with this one, what makes this one of the more difficult fights to break down, it just depends on really where the placement is of this fight on the card. Had it been a 3-round fight, you can kind of lean one way. If it was a 5-round fight, which it is, you might be leaning a different way, because it changes the psychology behind the fight. If it's a 3-round fight, Michel Pereira at middleweight, you know, you can expect him to kind of go all out early. Probably gets a finish of Anthony Hernandez, where Anthony does have to take an ass whooping early, because a very fresh Michel Pereira, he's a giant dude. He's super strong. He's full of, you know, water in his body and his brain. Better cardio. But for how long, we don't know. Definitely hits a way fucking harder, way faster. He's just healthier at 185. So that's a very dangerous guy to fight, knowing that he can go all out for at least 2 rounds, where he can get that finish, and then all he has to do is potentially survive the third. For 5 rounds, he has to kind of pace himself, because if he doesn't get that finish early, there's 4 more rounds where Anthony can push a pace, tire him out. Anthony has the proven cardio here. So at 5 rounds, it's super fucking hard. So very simply put, I think Pereira obviously hits harder. He's more dynamic, and Fluffy has always been kind of weak to the body. And Pereira, the guy's a dynamo. If he can throw a teep to the body just right, and he will hurt Fluffy if Fluffy is not ready for it. And on top of that, I do think he can stuff Fluffy's takedowns early. Fluffy's not necessarily the best at getting takedowns. He's just more at breaking you with relentless pace. And then when he gets a hold of you, he can get you down. But he's not necessarily this perfect takedown artist. You can stuff his takedowns in the first round for damn sure. And then in the clinch, if Pereira starts blasting him with knees, like Pereira's going to hit him hard. It's just how long can Fluffy take that ass whooping? But if he does take it, he's a durable guy. He can take shots to the chin. Just the body's what I'm worried about. If he does, and he does grind out Pereira for a bit, if Pereira maybe hurts him, stumbles him, and then he goes for the finish and he can't get that finish. He's been going for submissions lately. And say Pereira goes for the guillotine and then Hernandez like lifts him up, drops him, and then like gets him in a Vom Flu temporarily. Pereira lets go. Then he gets controlled for the rest of the round. He's tired now. Fluffy's going to take over and whip his ass because that cardio is weaponized. That pace, that griminess, that like his nasty clinch elbows. Like he's been fighting very beautifully. Like when I first saw Fluffy in the Contender Series, I thought this guy was not necessarily uber talented, but I'm like, this guy, he has a bright future, but I don't know how bright that future, that star is going to shine. Now that he's been kind of training, kind of wanting to be the reincarnation of Cain Velasquez pre, incident in that intersection, the dude is like impressive. Like I can see that he is not athletic. He is not what you would call it, like an intimidating guy. But when he fights, which is all that matters, the guy will break your ass down and just chew you up. And that's a fun style. Like he gets these guys out of there. So what makes it super difficult is deciding, is he going to be able to take that ass whooping early if it does come, or if Pereira paces himself a bit, I think it's going to benefit Anthony because the longer the fight progresses, I think Pereira will eventually slow down. The other thing you have to keep in mind with Pereira, which is it's no other fighter you have to worry about this, will he tire himself out? Will he do anything fucking stupid on the way to the cage? Will he have a whole 15-minute dance choreography on the way to the cage? And even though it might not tire him out, like I don't need him to reduce his cardio by any bit at all. Will he do a stupid backflip that land on a guy's face with his knee and then maybe put in doubt that they might cancel the fight? Not cancel it, but call it a disqualification, because that was what happened with his last fight. I knew he was going to beat the shit out of Ihor. He does that fucking backflip on him, and I'm freaking out because I'm like, don't review the tape. Don't review the tape, because he landed that knee on his face. There's a lot I love about Pereira. I love that in general, but when you're betting on him, it's too scary sometimes. Hernandez, what I'm thinking is, and again, this is the more difficult fight to predict. I'm thinking personally just kind of waiting to see if Hernandez can take that ass whooping, because right now, minus 130, minus 160, I think he's going to lose that first round or lose in the first round. But if he survives that, you can take advantage. I mean, if he starts taking these body shots, and he has mentioned in the past, because I keep mentioning his weak to the body. I picked Kopylov to hit him to the body and crumble him. He ate that pretty well and just kept moving forward, which that's a good sign. He even mentioned that he's been kind of working and conditioning his body, no longer drinking, just kind of staying up to right so he doesn't get hurt that way. But the other thing I don't like about Fluff, he does take a lot of shots, and just how many is he going to take from Pereira, that Pereira can knock you the fuck out at any point. It's just that if he doesn't and this pace starts to slow, it's going to benefit Fluffy. Ultimately, though, it's super tough because it does require Fluffy to get beat up a bit early. I don't think he's going to immediately shoot in for a takedown. I think he's going to strike with him, which is super scary as a Fluffy backer or a better, for God forbid. I really want Pereira to win because I think that Pereira versus Pereira matchup would be... Oh, wait, this is middleweight. That'd be nice. I would also like a Pereira versus Drickus fight. That'd be fun. I think Drickus wins it, but it'd be a fun fight. But in a perfect world, Pereira wins. He wins the title. We have a Pereira versus Pereira matchup. That'd be awesome. I do like both the fighters. It's just who do I think has the higher ceiling? It's really tough to say because I think I need to see more from both men. I need to see Fluffy's ability to not get beat up. You know what I mean? Like I think he's been given the right competition for him to kind of run through, opposed to Rodolfo Vieira. I think a lot of people expected Vieira to beat his ass, but that's when we truly saw his potential. And for Pereira, let's be honest as well, they haven't been giving him super tough competition. I think his most impressive win at middleweight is Petrosky, where he just finished him easily. We didn't. I actually predicted Petrosky to take him down and control him, but that's what scares me here with Fluffy is that I expect him to do that as well. Or is Pereira just going to one shot him? Like this guy just seems to have the cheat code at 185. I mean, I've never seen Alex or Michel Olenjejic get hit that hard to the point that he actually makes a face. You know, like he finished him by kicking him to the body and choking him out. It's such a scary matchup betting wise that I think the smart thing is taking Pereira dog odds, and then if he doesn't win in that first round, but he will win the first round, taking Fluffy live. So kind of a cop out, but I have to go with that. I'm going to go with Pereira knockout, not because I'm confident in it. It's just to me, it seems like it's going to be likelier to happen early for Pereira. That if he doesn't, that's when I'll be like, okay, let's go Fluffy. Let's see what he can do. I do think that Pereira's cardio is good. I've always thought he's got good cardio for him to be able to do these flips. It's just only one of these men has lost to a 145er and a 155er, and that is Michel Pereira. I'm gonna stick with like my brain because my gut is telling me Pereira is going to be able to get that knockout in the first round, but my brain is telling me Fluffy is going to be able to get that submission in round number 2 or 3. Also, yeah, man, this is super tough. This is a super tough matchup, and it is to me one of the more intriguing matchups in the UFC within the last year. This is truly like it has to be a 5 rounder for it to be that complex, but a 3 rounder, I think Pereira fucks him up. So I will go with Fluffy round number 3. He just has to withstand this ass whoop and tire out Pereira. And I want to see that durability from you, Fluffy. I do. I want to see if you are able to take this ass whooping from Pereira. And truly, like, because we haven't seen Pereira in the cage for that long at middleweight, there's so many questions there. I've seen Fluffy go all 3 rounds. I've seen Fluffy get dominated, come back and finish a guy. You know what I mean? So I got to go with the more proven of the two at middleweight. I got to go with Fluffy Hernandez, but by no means do I think that he is necessarily like a future champ. For damn sure, I don't think so. I think there's a lot he needs to work on, but what he provides for us in that middling, like top 15 range, not top 10 range, I think is really good. I think it is perpetually a top 15 kind of fighter. Pereira might be able to make it to the top 10 based off of his ability to just finish anyone. It's just, again, he's fighting a guy that has a really good style to ultimately use his athleticism against him by withstanding that ass whooping, tiring him out, and then just out grappling him. So for me, I will go Fluffy Hernandez. Not confident, literally by a percentage, 49-51. I'm going Hernandez to be able to take the punches and kicks of Pereira. Just be wise to it, and then just grind him out and tire him out. Use that lactic acid buildup. This dude's all fucking jelly and bones, and Pereira's nothing but rock and muscle and rock. So I think that muscle's going to be needing more air than Fluffy's fat. So I'll go with Fluffy by the second round sub here. So let's see. No. Here we go. Yeah, let me know what you think in the comments below about these fights. Let me really know what you think. If you have a definitive winner in this fight for Pereira versus Hernandez, like if you have like, hey, definitively, I think Hernandez is going to run through him because of XYZ, or are you just like me, do you not know because there's so many X factors? Like for Pereira to win, he has to finish Hernandez. I don't think he can win a decision for 5 rounds. I think if Hernandez is still conscious, he'll have the cardio to kind of take over. And Hernandez, on the other hand, I don't think he can knock out Pereira. Shit, it'd be crazy if he can, but ultimately it's going to be by a finish. So that's why I'm thinking the fight doesn't go the distance is probably foolproof here. But yeah, if you have a definitive side, let me know in the comments. Johnny TigerBomb MMA. Watch out for my Halloween special coming out soon.